Hey everybody, it's Camera Work Podcast number 13, and we're joined by two guests today. We have P. Frank Williams with us.
P. Frank, I'm in the building. Nice to be here.
Right, and Medina Lynn.
Hello everybody.
Right, now Ray Tamara is not here. He's the usual co-host of the show, but because you're here, Frank, I thought we had a good opportunity to use Medina as the third voice rather than Ray, because...
Ray's your homeboy?
Yes, that's my homeboy.
That's like your ace kung fu and y'all talk shit on the podcast?
Yeah, he's the co-host, and it's funny because he's usually a super quiet guy, but somehow on the podcast he talks really, really good. So he works out really good, and he shares the studio with me, so he's...
Okay, that's awesome. Okay.
And he supports like every stupid idea that I come up with. I'm like, let's get into video, and Ray will be like, okay, and next thing you know, we're making a video. Mm-hmm. And even like the podcast, I'll be like, hey, I got an idea, let's do a podcast, and Ray's like, okay, I'll be on the podcast. So he's been really, really good. But I thought because you've been so successful in video as a video producer, and that's a field that Medina is interested in, so I thought it'd be better to have Medina here so we can get into a certain type of conversation. Okay. But before we get to the specifics of who you are and where Medina is in terms of her career and things like that, let's just kind of run through what has happened for us in the past week. All right. So Medina, let's start with you. Anything interesting in either the past week or since you were here? You were on number 8. So has anything happened for you since you've been here photographically? Anything interesting?
Well, I got emailed to do a couple of lookbooks for a jewelry line with somebody that I went to school with. Just been editing, videos that I have. That's basically just it. Just trying to brush up on editing and, my photography. So that's basically it.
Now, for me, I've actually found that shooting jewelry stuff is really difficult. Like anything products, I think I'm going to turn those down from now on because it's just so difficult to light it that I'm at the point where I've done so many bad product shoots. I don't think I would take another one. I think I would just turn down the job personally. So just be really careful with that because there is so much to lighting products, and sometimes even the clients don't understand it. But if they give you I've shot purses and stuff, they give you a leather bag and it's shiny, and then you light that one way, then they give you a suede one that's not reflective, and you need to light it totally different because without the reflection, you can't tell the texture, and I don't know, it's a mess. So I think I'm done with all products. Well, this guy
normally just has he normally likes body shots. So majority of his products are necklaces, like little men or bracelets. So he really likes the person to be wearing it versus just
there's a person.
So that's a plus. So.
Right. I think that helps. Right. Now, P. Frank Williams, right? You live in California.
In Los Angeles, California.
Right, which is my second favorite place in the entire world.
It's so ironic to hear you are, Brooklyn boy, loving LA.
But I love LA. My God, it's my favorite well, I can't say my favorite. My second favorite jiu-jitsu school, 10th Planet, is based in LA. So I would just live in LA, just go there. But my favorite's Marcelo Garcia, which is where I train in New York. Okay. But your current job, if that's the correct word, what is your current job right now?
I guess mainly I work on the show Unsung on TV One. It's a 1-hour music documentary series that's been on for 6 seasons.
Right.
And it profiles, old school R&B and hip hop artists, Sheila E., Houdini, Fat Boys, whoever.
Right. And, the nearest comparison, I think, would be Behind the Music.
Behind the Music. It is kind of like Behind the Music for African-American artists, so to speak.
But before we get to that specifically, anything that you shot anything that you worked on in the past week or 2 weeks that is interesting in any way?
Well, I always have multiple projects going on. So I think when I was with you last in Portland, I'm working on this show with this Andy Warhol's cousin, Monica Warhol, and I've been trying to figure out the angle of it. So I'm kind of in the developmental phase. It's an art show about her, doing her art. And
is this something you're doing on your own, or is this?
It's my own show. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
I do enough shows to pay the bills, but also do my own stuff to move my stuff.
Right. So what drew you to that specifically?
I ended up meeting her, and we kind of clicked, and I thought it was an interesting story, and so I love telling stories, and I like the idea of her legacy being, Andy Warhol, 2013, but in the Facebook technology, Twitter kind of age.
Right.
We're doing a show with some African American trashmen who are in the DC, Virginia area, and that's kind of cool, and it's all about their world. They're multimillionaires working in waste management.
Really?
So
they're not dumping garbage into the truck.
No, they got multiple contracts with the cities and that kind of shit. So
yeah, I didn't know that paid that well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody has trash, right?
Right. But it's funny though, when you're growing up, your mom always goes like, do your homework. You want to be a garbage man? And then it turns out in New York, at least, garbage man, or really sanitation man, it's like the best job in New York.
Yes, it's good. I mean, ironically, I was doing the BET honors, I think about 3-4 years ago. And Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, was being honored on the show. And so I'm interviewing him in LA at the Roosevelt Hotel, and he's telling all these crazy stories. And, you know, obviously he's been since he was a kid, he had a paper route. And so he started with 1 or 2 paper routes. And next thing you know, he buys the paper route. But then he's like, I always wanted to be a garbage man.
Oh, really?
Because he's like, the garbage man, they always had money. They had a steady check.
That's funny.
And they were on top. And he was like, I would see them and out in the public, they were real flashy. So it was like, he admired the garbage man. Whereas other people might, whatever.
Yeah, my mom never admired them. But like I said, it ends up being a job with like a 5 or 10 year waiting list. Everybody wants that job.
The benefits of it, ridiculous, hard to get fired, great money, pension.
Right.
So
it's a much better job than people thought. But anyway, in terms of the week, for me, the only thing I shot like that was mildly interesting was I shot a jiu-jitsu tournament. And you know, most of the action's on the mats, the matches, and I probably shot like, I don't know, 7,000 or 8,000
Jiu-jitsu
images.
is like mixed, like capoeira kind of?
Not at all. No, it's the closest analogy is college wrestling. It's just ground fighting. And if you're not, like, if you don't know the two guys, it's incredibly boring. When you watch it, there's just nothing interesting about it.
Okay.
If you know the people, one of them, then it's interesting. And if you know the techniques, it helps a little. But I don't think it's ever going to become a mainstream sport where the average person, people want to see the UFC where there's some punching.
Yeah, your guys is all like cerebral, like you're like trying to like dominate. You're not really like boom, boom.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing though. And I'll tell you this, that's interesting about it is, when you're grappling with someone, it's like a sport, but unlike a sport with a ball or a bat where you're like, oh, you know, the grass was slippery today or whatever. It's just you and me essentially fighting. And I have to admit, I lost if you beat me because we tap. So if you get me in a choke, I have to tap. And when I tap, if you think about it, like, I'm telling you straight up, you won.
You like that? Why do you do it to me? You're always talking about your jiu-jitsu.
I like the challenge. I love it personally, and I'm not even particularly good at it. You know, I've been training 13 years. I'm blue belt, which you could get a blue belt in like 3 years. But I love the challenge of how difficult it is. There's so many techniques, but the idea of that, you and I are going to compete, and I can't make any excuses. Like, if I lose the match, I have to just say, I tap, I go, you won. Let's go.
So like a dude have you all real choked up, you're like, I gotta give it up, you
tap. Yeah. Right. You know, and the thing is like in all the other sports, it's like if you're in basketball team, you're like, well, that dude screwed us up because he kept missing shots or the coach gave us the wrong plays. This strips you to the core and there are no excuses. It's just you and me rolling. And if I beat you, and you know, these guys come in, they're muscular, they're boxers, whatever. And we got guys 125 pounds, will tap them in 2 seconds under jiu-jitsu rules. They have no idea what to do on the ground. And again, they have to admit, you won. Like you got my neck and you could have killed me and I'm only alive because you did not kill me.
Right.
And I think it's a beautiful thing. All right. But let's get to you specifically. Now, you're currently working on Unsung, which again is a little bit like a behind the music on TV1. It's a BET affiliate station.
Yeah.
Prior to that, you worked on American Gangster.
Yes.
Which was, to me, a really cool show. Like, you would just see the stories of the criminals, and for some reason, that's a fascinating topic, isn't it?
Well, it is America. I mean, the country was both created by criminals.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they talk about the Kennedys, right?
Well, beyond that, I mean, the people came from another country. They're like, you know, they were criminals and the bad guys from Europe, and they kind of moved over here. So what do you think is going to happen from
But those stories are like, there's magazines, at least in New York area, you've got like Feds and Don Diva, and I think
American Gangster was so successful because I think that, you know, Bill Gates went to Yale or Harvard or something like that, and he got his college education and became an excellent businessman and a global genius. These guys, they had the same equal kind of genius, but they were in the urban neighborhoods and they used drugs or money or other kind of situations to kind of do that. I found some of the most fascinating and brilliant people when I was producing American Gangster. I mean, it was just from, you know, Tookie Williams to Felix Mitchell to Monster Cody, who I did a piece on. He was one of the most notorious gangsters in LA history. Yeah. But he was a novelist and a writer. And so
I read that book, and, you know, it was fascinating because he talks all about coming up as a gang member, an LA hardcore gang member, like Crips, whatever. And, you know, he's shooting people and all of this. And then, you know, he gets that kind of turnaround and he seems so smart and intelligent. And then he gets out for a couple of years. He's on like Donahue or whatever the show was at that time. And then ends up going back in.
Well, he was institutionalized. I mean, and I think, you know, for me, when I was producing that show, one of the things I wish that hopefully most people understood that it was a cautionary tale. Do not repeat. I mean, some people say I glamorized it by putting it on television. And Of course, I'm going to include
That's
the
always
sex,
the question.
the drugs. I'm not
Right.
going to, stray away from the story because
Right.
as a good producer, I just want to take a picture of what happened and let you
Right.
see it.
Right.
That's not my job to tell you what color it is and whatever. And so, actually, ironically, I talked to Monster maybe about 2 months ago.
He's still locked up though?
No, he got out of jail.
Oh, that's cool.
Ironically, he got out of jail. He had went back to Pelican Bay on a violation. And when I was doing the show, I was supposed to interview him, and he ended up getting locked up. And so he, because I was supposed to go to the county, but then he went too far in a federal facility, and it's very tough to go to a federal facility.
Right.
But he got out, but he can't come to LA County. He has
really?
an ankle bracelet on that if he crosses the line in LA
it's
County,
gonna beep or something?
It beeps. And so
Funny.
they was like, they let him out, but he has to stay
Right.
like San Diego. And so he
Right.
called me up and asked for, some money and other kind of situations. But
Right.
it really is a shame, because he was a brilliant guy. And
Yeah.
so, the show was really good success and, really, really popular. It airs on A&E now.
Right. My favorite one that I watched was these guys. This is so good. They're locked up and they're on a work release program. It's like 4 or 5 guys. They're on work release.
Yes, that's true.
And while they're on work release, like say every Friday, they go and they rob a bank.
I'm blanking out on the guys' names, but
They
guys from New York,
they
Queens,
rob
yeah.
banks.
Yes.
So then the feds are profiling the bank robberies and they go, this fits the pattern of like these 5 guys.
Yeah.
And they look up the 5 guys and they go, oh no, they're locked up. It can't be them.
Right.
So
Yeah,
they end up
it got
getting away
education.
with
Some of
it.
them brilliant. Only in America, right?
How
I love
smart
it.
was that though?
Fascinating.
It's unbelievable.
Fascinating.
They got away with it for a long time.
But to me, I think I got off on some of the wild stuff, the stories.
Right.
Monster Cody or Felix Mitchell is one of the most
Right.
notorious. New Jack
Rick
City,
Ross, too.
Rick Ross. I mean, based on Felix's life, New Jack City. But one of the ones I really enjoyed producing was Mutulu Shakur, who is Tupac's stepfather, because to me, he was at the crossroads.
Right.
They were like black militants in the '60s. Who were kind of like the Black Liberation Army. Tupac's mom, Afeni Shakur, was affiliated with them.
Right.
Assata Shakur. Angela
Right.
Davis was kind of like a cousin of what they were doing.
Right.
But they were supposedly robbing banks for them to fund the movement.
Right.
And so it was a weird mix of crime and politics and black freedom at the same time. So
Right.
no matter what I do, I try to make sure that I have some sort of a message or some sort of a thing. In American Gangster, to me, the whole point was do not repeat this, because
Right.
drug dealers and killers usually end up in jail or dead.
Right.
They don't
You
usually
gonna
get
say
back. They
something?
move to Miami,
You were gonna say something about Tupac?
Oh, no. I was just agreeing with him. I was agreeing.
Okay. But what was your role? And let me go back one step. Before we get to that, before that, you worked for The Source. You were
Yes.
like the West Coast editor of The Source?
Before I started working and producing television, I actually was a journalist. I went to school out here in Columbia University Journalism School and undergrad in San Diego, and then I worked at the LA Times actually for 7 years as a
So which
reporter.
came first, The Source or the
No,
LA
as
Times?
LA Times. I graduated from Columbia and I went directly to work at the LA Times out of school. And I worked as a reporter covering like the police beat, crime, courts.
Right.
I worked
Now, how
in
did you segue into The Source magazine, which when you wrote for it, you were writing for it as an editor? correct?
Yes, and then I
Right.
became the executive editor of The Source later after I was
Right.
I opened up the West Coast offices for the magazine.
Okay, but you had the real Source, the proper Source magazine, correct?
Well, I mean, it was a different thing then, because we were like the Rolling Stone of
That's
hip
what I'm
hop.
talking
We were
about.
on record. We were the
Right.
magazine of record.
Right.
The record reports and all these kind of things. It was a big deal. You know what I
Right.
mean? And so our artists weren't getting cover in mainstream media, so the Source really did that. And so I worked 7 years at the LA Times, and then I went to work at the Source in the late '90s, early 2000s, when hip hop was at its crazy apex.
Right, because you were also there with the right artists, with that whole, like, say, Tupac
Tupac and
Death
Biggie.
Row
Well,
time,
yeah, I mean, when Tupac, actually, when Eric died, Eazy-E, in 1994, I wrote that cover story of Eric way back then. I wrote the cover story of Tupac when he died, Biggie, all of those famous, infamous Suge Knight cover stories of the 90s when the whole Bad Boy, Death Row, all of that. I was at the magazine and doing a lot of
Right,
crazy
that's
stuff.
that classic period,
Yes.
right? But what was that like? Like, how different was it, say, from working for the LA Times? Were you able to just kind of go in and be a journalist and interview, or did you have a lot of like just craziness and unprofessionalism and dealing with those artists?
Well, obviously, hip hop is rock and roll, and I think that when I was working in a corporate place like the LA Times, I had my little jacket and blazer and my khakis, and it was really kind of like, you sit at your desk and you do your work. Hip hop, it was at the Source, it was a lifestyle. You're in the club with the artist. You're in the studio with the artist. The artist might confront you if you write a record review.
That in the beginning, yeah, like Wu-Tang was beating up every writer.
Wu-Tang punched one of my homeboys. It was an article on Rap Pages, and then there was a piece of art right next to it.
I know the story. Yeah.
And
it was a drawing.
It was a drawing. It really wasn't dissing them, but they took it as a diss.
Yeah, but can you imagine you punched the writer because you don't like the drawing?
I got the man tried to like holler at me a couple times, like, so he's these whack ass writers. I've been confronted. I was on the radio. I mean, I gave The Chronic, 2001, Dr. Dre's classic album.
Right.
I gave it a 4.5. Well, the magazine, it was a politics to get the rating. So the rating circulates when you do a record report. The most famous thing about the source was the record report. Like
right.
five mics.
Right.
Yes. And so everybody would take the album or the music or the CD back then or whatever it is, pass it around the office and write their review, and then you add them all up together, and that's what it's supposed to be.
Right.
But, back when I was at the source, there wasn't a big West Coast presence. So Dr. Dre, you know how East Coast people think that you're better than everybody else?
Right.
You know how you guys do.
Yeah, when you're East Coast,
exactly,
of course,
right?
Brooklyn,
You're like, I'm Brooklyn, I'm from
chain.
Bronx, you know what I'm saying? I created this shit.
I think Tupac was born in New York,
yes.
right? It's not Jersey. So,
and so
come on.
when we did the mic rating, it got a 4.5. It was very controversial because the album became a humongous success, considered one of the greatest albums of all time. I apologized to Dre because I knew Dre and I saw him.
Right.
And the Source Awards, I think 2001 or 2, we were scheduled to give him a 5 mic, to give him his 5 mics, but
like a redoing it, sort of.
Sort of.
Right.
So to me, when I was working at the Source, the lifestyle, the drugs, the girls, the FBI, the guns, the whole shit was a real thing. You know what I mean? I couldn't separate my job. When I was at the LA Times, there was a white writer who wrote about hip hop. And an artist would never confront him. But an artist know me. He might be like, what's up? I didn't appreciate that shit.
Right.
So there was no separation of the worlds, which was good and bad.
Right. But see, one of the problems that I find is that as you become friendly with an artist, it can be really hard to, say in my case, talk business, to talk money as you become very friendly with the artist. Right. And I know like with Medina, you don't have to name the artist, but there was a female artist you mentioned to me one time. She's not really high level, but female artist, and they kind of approached you like, yeah, we want you to be like our video person. You're going to kind of roll with us and shoot video. Right. But what was that experience like for you? What's good or bad about it when you start becoming friends with the artist?
I think it's bad in terms of when the artist isn't who they are in their music to you. To me, that situation came out a little bit, unprofessional, and it was more not because they wanted me to do the video. It was kind of, they needed me to do it, and it was kind of like a using thing. And that went on for a couple of weeks, but then I just decided just to, separate my whole self from that, because as soon as we would start hanging out together, and then we would want to do business together, and then we would try to have conversations about business, and it just wouldn't turn out right because of that relationship that we built as friends. Right.
And so do you encounter that? You're at the Source and you're friends with Method Man.
Well, I think that is twofold. I mean, you can look at it two ways. There's been times when I've hired people who were friends of mine, and sometimes they've worked really hard for me and went out of the box to do it. Other times I should have never did it because they take me for granted and totally just played me out. You know what I mean? Use my name to get in parties, not show up to work on time, do all kind of foul shit. Right. But at the same time, the fact that I'm friends with Scarface, that I know Sheila E., or that I can call, see Dr. Dre or Cube and be like, what up? Those relationships that I formed in the 90s, being able to do that, I'm able to go directly to the artist, bypass a publicist.
So then it does work
and Big Daddy Kane is like, I trust you. Right. And I don't trust these people. So if something happened, I'm hollering at you.
I'm coming right back to you.
Right. And so the relationship is how you do it. And I think for me, the most important part of it is integrity. And so whatever I did in the 90s, Scarface is going to remember that. Whatever I did back then, Dre or whoever else or whatever artist. So if you do and stay to your word, it usually will work out for you in the end. So that's my best kind of, attitude about it. I think it's good to have a good relationship with your artist, a personal relationship.
But how did you transition now from print into video? Because on the surface, there's not a lot of connection between those two.
Well, I think at the late 90s, I saw that the print situation was dying. While I was at the LA Times, I was freelancing for The Source. So that's how I started working for them. There was nobody in LA on the West Coast writing about hip hop. And so as I did it, for a while as a freelancer, they approached me. It was like, hey, do you want a job? And I was like, oh, sure. I mean, we'll open up our West Coast offices and do that. And then they were like, after a few years of being an editor, writing about these artists, they're like, we got the Source Awards. They're like, do you want to write it? Because I actually went to school for television and film. I didn't go to school for print journalism.
Which is, what did you go to school for,
Film.
Medina?
Film.
For film.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And you have some sort of degree in that? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
I have an associate's of applied science in film.
Okay. But go on. So how did you make the transition from print into?
Well, like I say, I always wanted to. When I started out, I wanted to be. Hey, this is P. Frank Williams. I'm reporting live from John Ricard studio, and we're having a great conversation about love and sex and romance. So that was my initial thing that I wanted to do, and I just kind of got caught up in the writing world. But I produced the first few Source Awards, not the ones in the early '90s, but when it kind of came back in '99, and so. I started doing the Vibe Awards, and I worked on the BET Awards, the Grammys, and it just became, and I saw the death of magazines, and I just, probably about around 2002 or so, I became a producer full time.
Right, and let's talk about that for a second, because I've watched you produce, because we did a piece on Rick Ross at your spot.
Yeah.
In LA, I guess it's like a year ago or something like that.
A couple years ago, yeah.
And it's the real Rick Ross, the guy.
Yeah, Rick Ross was there, the real criminal, the most notorious LA drug dealer ever. Yes.
Right, but that guy, he's so like spiritual, like he eats right, and then we get to like the elevator to go up to your spot, and he's like, let's take the stairs, and I'm like, is the elevator broken? Why are we taking the stairs? But he's that kind of dude,
Right.
He's like recommending books. I mean, super cool guy. But so I've watched you produce on that, and we were both in Oregon recently, Portland, for Mitch Jackson's The Residue Years documentary, which I guess you're producing that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. And I've watched you produce, and I talked about this a little bit the last time you were on, that like you wear different hats, which I think is interesting, because on the one hand, you're going up to the cameraman and saying like, almost like, say, what lens are you on? Or like, are you handheld or are you on sticks? Like you're on the technical part like that. Are we going to mic them with a lav or wireless, or are we going to just use a boom? But then you're also doing the people part. Like you've got to go now finesse the subject and make sure that they're comfortable, which are two very different skills, which are good at both of them, which I think is good, right? What else do you have to do as a producer in terms of knowledge base that one needs to acquire to be a good producer?
Well,
what else does the job entail?
it's people always like, well, what does a producer do? I mean, I just was writing something recently, and I keep going back to it because I guess it's my best anecdote is Phil Jackson, because I think are a really good coach. Phil not only has to manage the basketball, the plays, the triangle offense and defense, but he also has to make Kobe get along with Shaq. Right. He has to make sure his girlfriend, gets some time to hang out. He also has to make sure he deals with the ownership of the team. So to me, I'm dealing with everything. I'm not just dealing with the technical. I'm dealing with the network. I'm dealing with the camera. I'm dealing with the budget. I'm dealing with you. You might be having a cranky day.
I might want to go get lunch.
You might want to go to lunch. And I'm like, no, let's finish right now, and then we'll eat lunch afterwards.
We pull up to the spot to interview, I guess, Mitch's parents. And I go, we're going to go grab a bite, me and the guy.
No, but I'm like, we got to do this right now.
Yeah,
it's like, fresh right now. Like, if you leave, I might not be able, and it was better that we handled it, right?
I hated him, boy. I hated you at that moment. Because I'm hungry, man, and you're telling me I can't go. We're like half a block from the chicken shack, and you're like, no, we can't go get anything to eat.
We had to stay as a team. You can't just go leave. You're taking pictures, and you're like, oh, we're all like filming, and we're all there.
I would have come back with a chicken bowl.
Yes.
Got the job done. Don't worry, I got it done.
No, but I think like I say, to me, I really. I think that a producer is being a thinker, being like, I'm always at the last frame already in my brain.
Right.
You understand what I mean? So I know what the end of the movie is. And I'm like, what are all the things coming back
you're
to
seeing
get all those things? I'm seeing the big pictures.
Because if I'm doing a shoot here, I'm the producer in the sense that, and what drives me crazy is that you have people on a team who, they're not the producer, fine, but they don't have any sense of things. It drives me crazy. Like, let's say we're doing a shoot, we all agree, this model has to leave at 4 p.m., and we've got to do 5 looks. It amazes me that the makeup artist will stand there and meticulously paint eyelashes endlessly and never look at the clock and say, well, if I take 2 hours to do this, we're never going to get through 5 looks.
Right.
And I've got to come to her now and say, look, we need this done at X amount of time. And I find with all the hair and makeup people, like, they'll just give you time estimates. They'll go, I just need 10 minutes. But that's that fake 10 minutes. That could be half an hour to them. And it drives me crazy that I understand they're not the producer of the shoot, but to me, everybody on set can have some sense of.
But everybody has a different job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the best producer is knowing what everybody is good at and letting them do their job and getting it out of the way.
Right. Well, you don't want to
If this dude is really a great sound dude, if my dude over here is good with releases, my other dude over here is good at scouting locations, he good at I got a girl that's great at getting meals and releases and dealing with renting stuff.
Right.
Then you put those people in those places and you let them do that.
And let them shine.
But as far as time, that's important. I mean, as a young person trying to learn the game, I'm conscious of time because I'm in charge of the budget. And so these guys are on a 10-hour day if I'm working on a real TV show.
Right.
And if they go over that, they're about to get paid. And if I go back to the office, the line producer project, they're going to be like, well, what the hell is going on? Right. Why were they working 3 other more hours? And you cost me another, $1,500, $2,000. Right. And they got a meal penalty.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that in a lot of music videos. They run into.
They ain't messing around.
Yeah.
So
the union guys.
That's my ask when it comes back, because they're like, well, here's the budget and here's how much you spent.
Right.
So, it's important to be aware of all of those things.
Right. But now you're in a job, field like mine, where everybody wants to be in the field. Everybody you meet is like, go be your assistant, whatever. Everybody wants to hang out with the artists and the pretty girls and all this other stuff. But for someone like Medina, who's 21?
Yes.
Okay.
21.
What? He's thinking of Prince songs right now.
21.
But what should she be doing right now that is going to put her in a position to be able to get a job like yours, frankly?
Not freelance. I do enough freelance.
Freelance, she means free. Freelance could be paid. She means not free is what she means.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because, I think, everybody has a different journey to where they get to. I mean, I was actually a writer and a magazine person and then television. And so, to me, the fact that I learned how to write and tell a story has helped me immensely because I know what a story is when I was a writer. So when I'm a producer, I just don't know how to ask some questions. I really know how to do that. And so when I was on my journey, I didn't know I was going to be a producer, and it happened. But nowadays, I didn't have as many outlets and access to Facebook, Twitter,
huge difference.
YouTube.
Huge difference.
Amounts of she can take her camera out and go make up some of her friends, shoot a scene, boom, put it together with hardly no money, start up her own Vimeo channel,
now,
start doing her work.
Let me stop you right there. So say that one more time. Today she could repeat it for us. What could she be doing right now?
Today, if she had an idea for a short, she could just write it up. With some of her homegirls and people, they got a camera. It's very cheap to get the cameras now. Probably could do it on your iPhone and write out your idea, go film it, learn how to edit it, put it up on your own Vimeo channel, your own YouTube channel, which is free.
Right.
And start putting your work out there.
Now, I refuse to ask her this question. So I'm going to ask you to ask her.
Okay.
Has she done this?
Have you done that?
I have a Vimeo page with, I do a lot of behind the scenes work with John. So majority of my video that I do have are with celebrities, which can bring in a market. But it's the fact of how do I bring in that market? I mean, I understand I have social media. How do I make these people interested in what I'm doing versus what they see every day on YouTube?
But have you done what he said besides the stuff here? Because that's not what he said. He did not say.
Oh, I have work on my own.
Yeah, I mean, whatever your original idea is.
I've done music videos. I mean, stuff that I'm not.
What is your ultimate goal? What would you like to say? Right now, if you could write down on this little piece of paper, my dream job is.
I want to be a producer. I love.
Of what though? Where? What company?
I want my own company.
Okay, but if you have, obviously you're going to take some time to get to know the job and work for somebody else before you get your own thing. Where would you like to work? You work at MTV? You want to work at VH1? You want to work on the music morning show? You want to work on 106 Park?
I enjoy Viacom because I freelance there and I'm comfortable with the people that I've met there. So Viacom would be totally number one. Right,
but I mean more specific. Like, do you want to work on a music show? Do you want to work on a documentary?
Yes, I love music, entertainment, the gossip shows, the reality shows.
Okay.
Stuff like that.
Right. But I mean, I think it's good to narrow down and kind of be specific. Right now I'm, moving. I still do documentary, but I have a very specific things that I want to do as a showrunner or as an EP or sometimes in a film as just a producer. So knowing what your goal is tremendously affects the outcome. Because if you're just kind of out there like, oh, I only want to do whatever, then you don't know exactly. So to me, if there's a show that you like, maybe you like Gossip Game. Maybe you say, hey, I want to work on the Gossip Game. You, at the end of the show, you watch all of the credits.
Yes.
You find that person's name. You might see my boy Tone Boots' name and be like, yo, let me go on Twitter. There's Tone Boots. Send him a message. Hey, I'm such and such, blah, blah, blah.
And I'm friends with P. Frank Williams.
Hilarious. I guess you can do that. You can do that. And I'm saying that's specific. That's like, this is what I want to do. And I think that's important.
How much content of her own should she have produced by now? Because you said she should be out there with her friends producing these pieces of video that speak
to up to her. I mean, obviously time, issues, money, and whatever it is, but just try to do something, you know what I mean, and start to try to do that, and and try to work with people, be on their sets. One of the things that I found that's really good, I know the job that I was born to do. I was born to be a producer. I'm in the edit bay and I see the whole story in my head. So I mean, that's obviously my gift. But when I'm working on shows, say somebody like Benny Boom. I've seen people go through the process, like Benny worked for X, and they learn what they do by being on set.
Right.
I work with people who's like, damn, I didn't really know that I like to be sound. But once they were on set, they found their passion and their joy.
That's like when you're 5, you always want to be like a school teacher or a doctor because you don't know any other jobs.
Exactly.
You've never been around anybody but teachers.
But if you go on a set or if you go on a show or if you're out in the field, there may be something. You might like to be the production manager. You might like to know where every van is at. You know how much,
Right. You might see a sound guy and go, wait, this dude's got the cushy job because he just sits here. He's not carrying stuff. He's indoors.
But that sound guy that we just was working with in Portland, he had the fucking, he was in a prison interview and he has to stew up there. You might think it's not a big deal. Yeah. And if I come back to the Edibay, which has been happening before, and the sound was crackling or some shit wasn't popping and he didn't stop in the middle of the thing.
Right. Yeah, he's not getting another job.
Right.
But
so I'm saying that's important. I'm saying you might every job is important in the process.
Right. But like I said, music videos sound, I mean, it's nerve wracking because like you say, you got to get it right. But it looked a lot easier than some of those other jobs on the music video sets. Those guys were like carrying stuff, like the art department. They would make like a whole room out of nothing. It was amazing. You know, but again, going back to Medina, things she should be doing. She should be developing writing and communication skills so she knows how to tell a story, right? That's one thing you said. She should be producing her own content that she can start learning how to do this on her own with the limited resources, right? What other skills does she need to be bringing to the table when she goes to approach someone from the Gossip Game or Love and Hip Hop or whatever and say, hey, I want to be part of this? What other skills can you think of?
Obviously you got to have some original ideas. I mean, she's too young now to be like, well, here's my show. I want to do whatever. But I think you can be like, here's, I'm young, I'm fresh. I want to do whatever. Can I work as a PA? Blah, blah, blah. I've worked on whatever show. I like what you did. Know a little bit about them. Don't just be like, can you give me a job? I mean, there's a million people asking those folks to kind of work. So, I think just learn how to do your own thing. Like I said, learn how to tell your own stories and start telling them. And don't wait,
One of the things that I always advise, which is a little bit like you're saying about telling your own story, is like to kind of find a world that you're around and expose that world. Some world that you're in. Maybe it's a world of fashion. Maybe she's...
Well, I mean, I think you're talking about telling your own truth. Whatever your truth is in your life and whatever you feel is something that's true to your heart or a story that you want to tell, tell that story. It's like hip hop, the best stories and the most best, songs or stuff that's on people's heart.
Right.
And true
Stuff
to their
that
life.
touched me, like NWA Straight Outta Compton.
They was just telling their own story. Like, this is my neighborhood, this is what's happening. So whatever's happening in your life, you're a young woman, you're trying to maybe find New York City, maybe the young Sex and the City girl, maybe a photographer girl trying to whatever. Like, there's so much, she can do on her own.
Right. And, and I look at it too, like, if you're in her position, you have certain things in your favor. When you're super young like that, there's a certain amount of freedom that you get where you can pick up and go away for 2 or 3 days and travel somewhere and shoot something, and that you don't have to answer to someone. Like if you have kids, you can't just take off for 3 days or spend X amount of money on something. Or if you have a wife,
being young and with no burdens and no whatever, you can just kind of be free and be an artist. And so this is probably the best time to go explore and do your thing.
Right, because I think what happens is someone like her could go, like, they're envious of the established people. Like, you could look at me and go, oh, this guy's got contacts, he's got a studio, he's got all this gear, and then you don't have that. But I look at it like there's advantages she has that I don't have. Like I say, that ability to just kind of pick up and go and do whatever you want.
Well, it's like when you look at a little kid, like little kids don't see the cynicism. They're not jaded. They haven't had a life of crazy madness. They still believe, you know what I mean? And so she's still like that little wide-eyed kid over there, like, Alice in Wonderland, kind of going through the little maze and all the great things are still there.
Right. Now, how much do you use social media personally? How important do
I think I should be doing a lot more. I do it maybe 40% of what I can do. I do a little bit of Twittering. I do a lot of more Facebook stuff. But I do know that the amount of time that I'm on Twitter or Facebook when I have a show on TV or a project that's airing helps my process and gets people watching and brings people to me.
But I think it is interesting to note still, though, that there's a lot of people in 2013. Like, you're not an exception. Being a person who is tremendously successful at what you're doing in terms of doing real work. You're on true network TV, you're working with artists, you're getting paid for the work that you're doing, but you're not all over Twitter nonstop. And I think it's interesting to note that because...
But I think that that's important. I think that we are dumb to not... And let me tell you this, which I think is very important, is that a lot of the conversations that I'm having with people, I just had a conversation with Yahoo the other day, talking about video, short form video, branded content. So much of that is a part of the television film conversation. So some of that is driving the content before you even get to a whole television or film. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So social media is so in tune with the whole process. Like if you're not promoting on social media, you're like effing up your whole situation.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. But you find that it does work in your
100%.
field. Right.
100%.
But we could still note that someone like yourself who is successful is not necessarily on Twitter nonstop.
I'm not on my own business. Like, hey, I'm having a ribeye steak today. You know, I'm at the gym. You know what I'm saying? Rihanna just left my hotel. You know, whatever.
But I've spoken to her before. We've talked on a podcast about the idea of people that create a fame on Twitter. That's not like if you know how to see through it, you know they're not like on Twitter. They seem like the big mover and shaker,
right.
And then they're not.
Well, we call them studio gangsters.
Right, that's what it's like.
Studio gangsters, shit.
Right,
they
that's
get in the studio and they're just like guns and everywhere.
Right.
They go back home, they're like read Thoreau, you know what I'm saying,
right.
Shakespeare.
But they can't really do it on the street.
Right, but they have to be hardcore on Twitter. They're, you know, they're internet gangsters.
But I think you have that with, like I said, with these types of fields where people as like models, they're running around on Twitter. Yeah, I'm on another shoot.
What's so funny is, even a deeper thing to me and my girl always have this conversation about this generation is a little too open. Social media has broken down the wall between the artists. You can just do whatever, like, now you can tell about your whole life, you know what I mean? And I think that's a bad thing sometimes, you know what I mean? Social media is good, but it's also too wide open, you know what I'm saying?
What I think is funny is how many people are so into it. Like I asked the game one time, we were on his tour bus, and I said, he was looking at his Twitter, I said, how many of you are at, like responses or ats to you do you read? And he was like, I read all of them. And I just thought that was funny because you don't picture the game as reading when you make those comments.
You don't think Rihanna is reading some of those things?
She reads some of them.
She responds.
Yeah, she responds to a lot of them. Yeah.
She responds to a lot. Her and Chris Brown do.
Yeah, but you think if you're Chris Brown and you've got like 2 Ferraris in the driveway and you're banging Rihanna, you're like, who cares about Twitter?
There was like a mythology, a mystery about the artist that they had, and now that's gone. Because Rihanna's on there smoking her weed, drinking her bottle, and wilding. You know,
kind of like Beyonce doesn't really give into that. She likes to separate her career from her personal business.
But even now she's getting a little bit more open with things because she sees that people want to be in your life.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And if not, they're going to go all over every gossip site in the world to try to find whatever information. Right.
But it's an interesting time because it's the first time that the artists have been able to be unfiltered.
I think it's a double-edged sword.
Public. Oh, of course, because some of them are like, you realize some of them are jackasses.
And you say some dumb shit sometimes. People do whatever kind of crazy stuff. You know what I mean? And Chris Brown could be in a rage reacting back to somebody. And maybe, if he would have thought about that a day later, he wouldn't have did that.
Right. And they're deleting tweets left and right. Media takeouts fine. And I'm like, here's what he said.
Exactly.
But we didn't have that with like Marvin Gaye. If he had something stupid to say, we never knew because it had to go through a publicist who was going to say,
well, one of the more interesting things too is that the immediacy of social media. We went out to a party recently and Rihanna, this was right when Rihanna was getting back with Chris Brown, some little mansion party in LA. And we left the party and she came in to kind of support him. It was his night. Got back to the house and their whole pictures and everything were already on social media. Like, you got 5 minutes. So if you do some crazy madness, you know what I'm saying?
It's up there instantly.
It's up there. You're Jamaican wife, you know what I'm saying? We can't have you out nowhere doing taking the wrong picture.
Fortunately, my whole Twitter, what I find funny though on a similar note is like on Facebook, when people link their Twitter and Facebook, it'll say like, if you like a picture on Instagram, your Facebook feed will be like, Medina liked 3 photos on Instagram. And there's guys I follow. So like on Facebook, it'll be like, Bob Smith liked these photos on Instagram. It's all just like big booty girls. And I'm like, don't they have wives that are going to catch the Facebook and go like, why do you sit around liking all these
it's funny. We're having this
pictures?
conversation the other day about, with Yo-Yo. I was interviewing Yo-Yo for an episode of Unsung about Too Short. And she was wanting to say, she's like, I think these kids are not thinking about their future enough. They're getting all these tattoos on their face. These girls are wearing these crazy clothes. Like, they're posting pictures of themselves, like, doing provocative things and whatever, because they don't understand that when you go look for a job, you don't think that, some restaurant or wherever you're going to try to work at won't, like, Google your name or do a little investigation.
What I do is...
And then John Ricard, your Facebook pops up, and there you are at, you know what I'm saying, Spearmint Rhino.
Yeah, and you know what happened? Well, even worse, somebody put up a picture of me dressed as Paul Stanley from Kiss when I was like 14.
Well, I forgot that you're a crazy rock and roll dude.
Yeah, I like
you're
rock
a metalhead.
I like rock. I like hip hop too. I like them both.
You told me that you were a metalhead before you even fucked with hip hop.
That's correct. I didn't get to hip hop until I heard Rockbox and the first PE album, and that was in Brooklyn. Yeah. But the funny thing is, then like other people will put embarrassing pictures of you up. But what I do personally is, I have one particular client who follows my Twitter, and she is like my gatekeeper. Every time I write a tweet, I think about that one person and go, do I want her to read it? And if it doesn't pass that test, I don't post it.
So what is your meter? Like how much, I guess the question is, how personal and revealing do you get in your
For
social
me, the
media?
problem is that, like, some people can call it negativity that I have a tendency to do. I think it's being funny. I'll be saying
You're
it like
a
a
little bit
joke.
sarcastic.
Right.
You're
Like I'll
very
be
cynical,
sarcastic
right.
and stuff. And like, so if I shoot something like the jiu-jitsu tournament, then I might see somebody else shooting it and I'll just be like, to people that I know, like, oh, and this fucking guy's here with a 300 and he's shooting, and like but it's a funny thing. I'm not truly negative about it,
Right.
but I can't write anything like that on Twitter. It doesn't work. Or Instagram, it doesn't work. It just makes you look bitter and angry and nasty and petty and small, and the humor of it does not come through.
Well, I mean, you still can use it for a fun thing, but you do got to be careful.
But
You
I
know
can't
what
do anything negative, like I said. But I might make a joke to her while we're on a shoot, like, yeah, look, here's the makeup artist. Yeah, she's going to spend another 35 minutes on this eyelash. And it would be funny. She would laugh at that. But if I tried to write that on Twitter, it doesn't work.
Transfer, okay.
So my main feature is to not be negative because it doesn't come across right.
So we have like the creative process of what I should be doing now as far as like Vimeo and YouTube. What are some business tips that you can give me that you have experienced yourself?
Well, like one of the things we talked about earlier is not really working with friends that much. You know what I mean? That's one of the harder lessons that I had to learn, trying to give people opportunities. It's better just to have a business relationship with folks, you know what I mean? And kind of just do it that way, separately. But like I say, I think for you, a person at your age, you need to get as much experience you can to figure out exactly what you want to do. That's why I was actually, what show you want to work on? What do you want to do? So, cause that will help you inform your own business. I don't think it's almost better like to have worked for a lot of other people before you have your own business, cause you learn how to be a better business person. You know, when I was at the Source, I saw some amazing, beautiful things, entrepreneurial. I saw the most ignorant things that you would never believe that a company was doing. Whether it be renting Porsches for the homies, I can't make payroll because all of the budget is went to them and promoting their video. I mean, crazy stuff where, you know, guys literally put a gun on somebody, you know. And so for me, being professional is very important because I want to make sure that my reputation is not that. So I've learned from all the jobs that I've done. So I think for you, start working for different people and that'll inform what you want to do with your own business.
Are there any like creative outlets that I can look into, like as far as like web, online, anything?
What do you mean?
As far as like funding, like if I wanted to fund my film, I know there's different.
Oh, there's crazy, like,
sources
you know,
that you
yeah. I
can
mean,
use
if it depends on if it's a short or, you know, I mean, depending if you're trying to do like a photo essay and you take pictures and you do.
Yes.
Right. So I think you just got to define exactly what you want to do and run towards that light.
Sure.
Like,
And you know what I think is interesting? Something that has only occurred to me in the last few years is, like, and they talk about it, and two different authors talk about it a lot. Tim Ferriss, who wrote the 4-Hour Work Week, and he wrote the 4-Hour Body, and then he just wrote the 4-Hour Chef. And there's a guy named Seth Godin who wrote a book called The Icarus Deception. Mm-hmm. And both of these guys kind of make the same point that you can be good at a lot of different things. Whereas I think there was a time that we thought like, well, he's good at, like, take like an Eddie Murphy. Like, Eddie Murphy was the funniest guy on the planet in the 80s. And then when he made a record, we were like, what the hell is he doing? You know, he's a comedian. He can't be a singer. But I think today we understand that you can be multi-talented. And you look at a guy like Chris Brown. He sings, I mean, I'm going to say good in terms of record sales. He's not, I don't buy Chris Brown records, but he's a good singer. He's a good dancer. He's a good actor. He's a good graffiti artist. I mean, those are a lot of different skills. And I think for someone like Medina, should be really conscious of the fact that you don't have to limit yourself and think, well, I'm a videographer, so therefore I'm not going to be good at pictures, or I'm not going to be good at writing. I think be very conscious. And again, if you look at those,
but I still think that, you know, one of the mistakes I made earlier in my career, I think, was I was trying to do a lot of different things. Okay. Now, for me in my life, I want to do a couple of things really well.
Right.
And I think that's just as I've gotten older, I have to narrow my focus. But when you're young, you're kind of just, oh, let me just, you know, whatever. And I think that's a good thing to run through the field to figure out exactly what you want to do. But somewhere down the line, you know, focus and, you know, is really important.
Right. Have your main 2, maybe 3 at the most that you're
That's your bread and butter.
That's all I told you. I was dipping into editorial work, photography, fashion. I was just trying to get my hands wet in everything and not really focusing on the one thing that I need to be focusing on, which is either producing or photography full time. Right. So,
and I think, you know, for me, as I've gotten older, is there's certain producers that I admire, you know what I mean, in their names, or Jerry Bruckheimer, or, you know, like Reggie Hullen, or people that I know, or just whatever. And I'm like, well, how did they get to their route? You know, what did I have to do to kind of either follow that and set my own path? And what kind of content are they doing? What kind of content do I want to do? What movies do I like? You know, what shows did I like? Who, you know, what do I want to do? You know, what is my vision? What am I good at? You know, these are all like, you know, as an artist, I think you should be eternally asking yourself about your own journey and coming back and looking at it.
Right.
You know, I guess as a producer, before you see what has happened on television or in film, I've seen like 25 cuts of that. I put that right there, hopefully that you'll laugh right there.
Right.
I put that moment right there, hope that you'll cry. And so I'm always kind of judging the whole process and asking questions along the way. You know, one of the things I think that's most important for you, if you know, becoming a producer, is always to be asking questions and always to kind of be thinking. You know what I mean? You know, good thing about television is that it's like fast food. Once I'm done with a project, I put it in my body. It comes out, it's over, and I can move to the next thing.
Right.
Unlike film, which is you may invest 5 years, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years in a film and finally get it made. You know, I do like that about television and short form video. You know, the web now is, you like I said, you guys have way more opportunity. If you wanted to do a little 3-minute video about growing up in your neighborhood, or the adventures of a photo essay girl, adventures in your week, 3 artists that you filmed, or hanging out with this guy.
But it's amazing because this is the first time in history that as a photographer, I can take a picture and guarantee 1,000 people are going to see it. I could not do that in the 80s. It was impossible. And like you said, if you wanted to make a film in 1993, you couldn't guarantee hundreds of people could watch it.
Right.
Whereas she could do that and create a video that gets hundreds of people watching it. And that's a wonderful opportunity that she needs to take. But I would give one last piece of advice before I talk to you about one more thing that you're doing is I would say also, who are your friends? Look at your friends. You should be hanging around with a group of people that are going to do something. You know, just like when you see in the old days, like Russell Simmons was friends with...
he was hanging out with Andre. He was hanging out with Rick Rubin.
Too. Like, you know, and then who did these guys become? Like Rick Rubin. And they went to totally different directions because Rick Rubin became that weird looking dude with the beard doing a bunch of rock stuff. And Russell Simmons is like the king of hip hop. But this is who these guys were associating with each other. And who are your friends? Are they going to turn into a bunch of like boring accountants, or are they going to be people who do something? And get yourself around people that are motivated and who do stuff. And I mentioned Ray tomorrow. Like I said, Ray is, and you know, Ray can be super quiet. Like Ray can go through the whole day and not say a word. But on the other side of Ray, every time I present an idea to Ray, he goes, okay, let's do it. You know, I'm like, let's get this studio. And Ray's like, okay, I'm going to give it a shot. Like, that's who I'm hanging around with. The guy who I go, let's start making music videos. And Ray was like, okay, we shot like 8 videos. We stopped.
I mean, it's important the energy that's around you affects, you know, whether it be your family members or friends, to move you forward, loved ones.
Oh,
or whatever.
Family can be devastating too, boy.
You know, a lot of people will tell you that you can't do it. I mean, I was just talking earlier, and I remember when I was at San Diego State and I wanted to apply to go to school at Columbia, and, you know, when I was like, I'm going to work in entertainment in New York and I'm going to do my thing. And a couple of my professors was like, well, no, you should just get a job at a small newspaper and work your way up. Because in their mind, that was their generation's route.
Right.
I'm in the hip hop generation. I'm like, LA Times, you're only going to pay me $60,000. I can go work at the Source and make $150 and do what I want and travel. Why would I do that?
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? So it's a different generation.
And then the thing in the Seth Godin book, the one that's called The Icarus Deception, what he tries to say is that the old model would have been get the job at the steel mill and get that pension and get that 40-year job and a watch and retire. But today the goal is to find your own tribe. For someone like her to start creating this content of some videos or whatever it is, pictures, that people support it, and she starts to build a buzz around herself where she's not banging down the door of the Source, but she gets her own following, her own people that are interested in what she's doing. And maybe they'll reach a point where the Source contacts her and say, we love what you do. Hey, why don't you come shoot for us? Right. That's really the goal, the difference.
Well, I mean, I think it's the whole Jay-Z adage is that, you know, they crossed over to me. I didn't cross over to them. Right. Right. They want to be a part of me. I'm cool. Right. You want to come kick it with me. Example of right. That. And so you want people to come to your brand. You don't want, you know.
Yeah. He said something like that about like Marcy. What did he say? Like, I made you love me, or I made them love you. He was saying to his fans, like, I made those other people love you because I publicized your story. Yeah, he said something exactly like that, right? But you do something else that I saw. You do some type of workshop thing, correct?
Yes, I'm actually putting one together now. It's a producer's workshop. It's like a producer's master class, and it's really teaching the art of storytelling. Hopefully we'll be doing one at Morehouse this summer. And it really is to try to teach young people of color how to tell a real story. What are the elements to that? You know, what are like having your story beats, knowing what your subject is about, having a beginning, middle, and end of a story, having B-roll, having, a final cut of whatever it is, having the right VO. And like people, the bad thing about the YouTube, Twitter, Facebook generation is that sometimes they just put up some rapidness and don't know how to actually tell a story.
Now this is what I'm talking about.
And I can't appreciate that. I had to go to a lot. I went to journalism school. I worked at LA Times. I worked at the store. I went to a lot.
Right. But see, this is when you talked about the Twitter thing. See, this is the kind of stuff that I'll be saying off mic. I'll be seeing some dude doing a workshop and I'm like, fucking guy's never sold a photo, or his work sucks. Look at this.
But he was a hustler, so he went out there and did it.
He has the market.
Yeah, or he's
He's
like
marketed himself on Twitter.
Worldstar has become a phenomenon, and it's maybe ghetto, but people are watching that. And he was smart to carve a lane for himself.
Right.
So whatever it is that you want to do or whatever. So the producer workshop is a way for me to get out my energy. I like to talk to the kids and teach and whatever, but I also feel like it's, I feel a responsibility as a young black man of color to try to make sure that my community gets three-dimensional portraits. And I guess it's the Black Panther Oakland in me, but I really feel important. So that's what the class really, I think, is all about, and, telling three-dimensional people.
Well, that's good, though, because you're qualified to do it because you do it for real. You've done it. You have a track record of doing it since The Source to American Gangster to Unsung and LA Times, no less. So you have the track record, and you've done it before, so I think it's fantastic.
Thank you.
How many times have you put on the workshop so far?
I've done it twice.
Yeah.
And but I've I speak at different schools all the time and that kind of deal, but I'm hoping to be able to do it more and make it like
right. And you said you may end up even doing one in New York.
Yeah.
Yes, you should.
Yeah. In New York. She's like,
she's going to be there.
She's going to be there. Exactly. Yeah,
so that's good.
So maybe I'll become a teacher. I think that's probably my eventual goal is to become a professor.
Right. Yeah, I think that's cool. That could be certainly a part. Like I said, we can do multiple things. That can be a part of what you do. So that's super cool. All right.
Well, man, thank you.
So that's good, and I want to come see this class as well.
Oh, good.
All right.
Yes.
So it sounds good.
Bring out your credit card.
Right.
And just like I told you earlier about doing stuff for people for free, friends. You know what I'm saying?
Your friends. No, son.
No.
Come through though, son.
If I came to try to rent your studio, I'm definitely coming with a check. I'm not coming with like, hey, yo, John, I bring you a case of beer. You know what I mean?
I like that.
Yeah, you like that? Yeah, I'm gonna come with a check. I mean, I'm gonna negotiate you, but I always try to make sure people get a check or get paid. I don't like to do shit for free.
Right. And it's funny because I had this conversation with Medina not that long ago, right? Can you try to summarize a bit of the point that I was trying to make to you about that idea of doing this stuff too much on a friend basis and how that can hurt you? We talked about that not long ago.
Not really sure.
We just talked about it. About the idea.
About the artist.
Correct. Like the makeup artist, for example, right?
About doing it for free?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm like, what?
She's drawing a blank. The point we try to make is that if I don't stay in business, I can't help my friends.
Oh, definitely. Oh, definitely.
Right?
Definitely.
So,
yes.
Okay, here she goes.
I do.
It can take her a minute at times, but she gets it.
About the makeup artist situation that we had talked about earlier. You had said that that somebody else wanted to rent the studio out to her for free, but you weren't going to be able to stay in business if you're doing free shoots all the time for her. And you've already created that foundation with her because you worked with her numerous amount of times before. So it shouldn't have been, nothing for her, because had you wanted her to hold something here, I'm pretty sure you would pay her for it or something.
Absolutely,
like if you were doing
right. And if she were going to do a makeup workshop here, I would charge her because
exactly, it's business.
Right. If I go out of business, I can't help people. The best way I can help the people around me is to be successful. The more successful I am, the more resources I have to help people. And if I do too much for free, where you get to that MC Hammer territory where you're doing everything for your boys and then you're broke and it doesn't work. All right. So we're all going to keep that in mind. Okay. So working from my distant to my close. So Medina, where can they find you if they'd like to find you?
Well, I am on Instagram like all the time. You can find me at Medina L, Medinaellele.
All right, sounds good. P. Frank Williams, where do we find you?
I'm all over the place. I'm in different airports: Charlotte Airport, LAX, JFK, O'Hare, Pearson. I can just keep going.
And we see your name in the credits when we're looking at.
I guess in the credits, but I'm www.pfrankwilliams.com. My company profitfromit.com, PROPHET fromit.com, at P. Frank Williams on Twitter. And Facebook, same thing, P. Frank Williams and all of that.
That sounds good.
So I guess I need to get on Instagram, get back on the iPhone.
Yeah.
It's a lot, though. People just everywhere.
They have all these new apps going on to get keys.
What do you like about Instagram?
Oh, she's on it nonstop.
I love the pictures.
You love the pictures. You just want to see what people are doing, right?
That too. I mean, it's a new form of social networking. Not too many people are on Twitter now, so Instagram is the new move.
So Instagram why is it better than Twitter?
Actually, I mean, not that you can't see pictures on Twitter, but I don't know.
You like to just see, because you're a photographer,
It's
so
new.
you like to look
It's
at
new.
videos.
And then they have all these new video apps. They got Keek and Vine and all this stuff like that.
That's what you were showing me, the Vine.
Yeah, I was showing you Vine. I was
Vine.
playing with. Yeah, I don't really use it much. I use Instagram periodically, but it's my Leica shots through the iFi card on my Instagram.
Okay.
It's not iPhone pictures. But I don't know. We've talked a lot about Instagram on a podcast. If somebody's going to come back and talk about it some more, but it doesn't really click for me personally the way it should. And like, she's my assistant, and she's going to get like probably 10 times the number of likes on any photo she posts versus me.
And she's young and cool.
Yeah, and I'm supposed to be teaching her, and it's
Right,
like she's
right.
going to get 10 times the number of likes that I get. It's like embarrassing. It's ridiculous. Like, if we're both in my studio and she posts a BTS, behind the scenes shot, and I post one, hers is going to get like 100 likes. And mine's gonna get like 11.
Are you a little bit jealous, John?
Well, yeah, I'm jealous of my wife. I took a picture of my wife walking yesterday. It got 46 likes. And then I shot a picture when we were at the same place, which was the street fair. And there was these kids protesting to save a school. They were like, save PS 150. And I took this great photo of it. And I wrote like, I don't know what we're trying to save the school from, but we're trying to save PS 150. I put it up. It got like 8 likes.
Oh.
And, we're walking and I'm watching the likes between myself and my wife. And it's like,
And you're
she's a
jealous of your
speech-
wife too?
I'm very jealous of my wife. Yes.
You already told me he was jealous of his
No,
wife.
I know. I told him about like how people on Instagram are. I can put up a picture of me waking up in the morning and get 240 something likes, but I can put up a picture that I took the time out to take and edit. And
Oh, well, we know people don't want nothing deep.
Right.
We have that conversation all the
It's a
time.
girl
We
that
don't want nothing deep.
Right.
They want the, Rihanna, drinking out the bottle.
Right, that's all they want.
Yeah.
So Instagram and me don't click as good as we should, but I am on it. I'm John Ricard on Instagram, JohnRicard. Okay, so check me out there. Check out P. Frank Williams. Check out Medina L. All right. We thank everybody for tuning in, and we will see you guys next time.
Peace and love.
Thank you very much.